Hi y'all, I'm Granny Cox. Today I will comment on leftist nonprofit organizations that are funding civil unrest and sometimes violent protests with the goal of undermining or completely destroying President Trump's administration under the guise of democracy. When I started this research, I wanted to find out who or what is behind the hostile protests that are still carrying on across the nation over Easter weekend of 2017. What I found out really scared me, and I felt the need to share that information. When members of Congress and the Senate go back to their home states for Easter recess, they will be participating in town hall meetings with their constituents. Some of the people attending these meetings are being well paid as trained agitators scattered among the local constituents. They position themselves 2 by 2 down front and in various locations throughout the floor. They do this so it will appear to the speaker and the promoters that the overall majority of the audience is opposed to the Republican agenda. Once the agitators get a hold of the microphone, their instructions are, don't let it go. They are to keep talking loud and work in unison with other scattered agitators in order to create verbal havoc and confusion. They are taught to ask hostile questions and to boo loudly whenever they feel like they are not getting a real answer, which is a nice way to say that they are not getting the answer they want. This tactic keeps pressures on the Republicans in order for them to question their continued support for President Trump and his policies. Organizing for Action declares on its webpage, "We are not backing down." The organization is drawing battle lines on immigration, Obamacare, race relations, and climate change. You can find these instructions I just mentioned, plus more, on the website of Organizing for Action. The owner of this website is none other than the former President Barack Obama. He is using his own organization to declare war on President Trump and his administration by aiding civil unrest with written training instructions to the agitators on how to bully GOP lawmakers. His organization is training tens of thousands of these agitators to protest against President Trump and his policies. This reminds me of watching a full battalion of army ants on the march, single file, destroying everything in their way to fulfill their leader's legislative legacy. Former President Obama is obsessed with creating a legacy that the American people will forever be in awe, and to do that, he is willingly sabotaging our government. Do you remember when he was stumping for Hillary during his time as President of the U.S.? He appeared before large audiences wearing a white shirt with an unbuttoned collar, sleeves rolled up at dark pants. Dressing that way sent a subliminal message. Look at me, I'm one of you. I represent the common white-collar male. I'm not a politician, I'm your friend next door. Well, while he spoke to the audience, his voice rose in volume until the audience was greatly excited, and he then said, "Hillary must win to protect my legacy." Everyone in the crowd went wild. Thankfully, she did not win, and now he has gone to the mattresses to gather his army together. There was an article in the New York Post by Paul Sperry, who reported on Obama's attempts to destroy the Trump administration with his shadow government. Sperry wrote that Obama did not go quietly into his home state. He, in fact, took up residence just several blocks from the White House, where he is working behind the scenes to set up what will effectively be a shadow government to not only protect his threatened legacy, but to sabotage the incoming administration and its popular America First agenda. I believe that Mr. Sperry is correct. I believe that Obama is instigating civil war between leftist liberals and conservative right-wingers, with the ultimate goal of toppling the Republican government now in charge. What he has been doing since leaving office and what he is doing right now with his foundation amounts to insurgency. He has an army of agitators and is forming a revolt of civil disobedience against an established government of the United States of America. He is committing treason by working to overthrow our government, our Constitution, and our laws by using his network of trained agitators who are prepared to turn out on his command and demonstrate, often with violence, to create pressure in support of his leftist political agenda. Have you ever thought about who is financing his nonprofit fund, Organization for Action? It is getting millions of dollars from billionaire George Soros' nonprofit fund called Open Society Foundation. Open Society Foundation funnels Soros' money to many nonprofit groups as long as their mission statements follow the same leftist political aspirations set by the OSF. The money taken by Organizing for Action from Soros' Society Foundation financed a disruptive group of dissidents willing to terrorize while working towards a complete overthrow of President Trump and his administration. Obama's foundation aligned itself with another nonprofit fund which gets its money from Soros' Open Society Foundation, and that one is called Indivisible. The leaders of Indivisible are openly associated with other groups financed by Soros. Indivisible trains and teaches the agitators on how to create civil unrest. When there are thousands of these agitators around the United States creating civil unrest, you and I will be looking at a group of radicals not so different than the Weathermen, a radical group organized in 1969 as a faction of the Students for a Democratic Society. Their goal was to create a hidden revolutionary party for the overthrow of the United States government and achieve a classless world, or world communism. Former Weatherman domestic terrorist Bill Ayers and his wife Benedine Dorn were leaders of this radical group who incited riots and multiple bombings and robberies around the United States. They were wanted by the FBI but spent 11 years hiding deep underground. They finally surrendered to the authorities. Since then, they both acclimated themselves back into society but never altered their Marxist political views. In 1995, Ayers and Dorn hosted a fundraiser at their home to introduce Barack Obama to their socialist political allies. Obama developed close personal and political ties to the infamous socialist and Marxist couple while as a senator. If Obama succeeds in securing more Democratic seats in 2018 and a Democrat winning the 2020 presidential election, socialism will become more instilled in our society than it is now. If this happens, Obama will rise up and declare that he single-handedly saved the Democratic Party from obliteration, and it's his organization that will challenge the DNC for control of the government. Even though he wouldn't run again for president, he would handpick the Democratic nominee who would let him rule the government through the back door to secure his legacy and push the USA into a democratic socialism state. If that comes to fruition, I will shed many tears because the USA I was born into will be lost forever as I know it now. Follow the money, folks, and you will see that George Soros and his ties to the many other leftist liberal nonprofit funds have bankrolled millions of dollars to undermine the 2016 presidential race. Good thing for conservatives that they were not successful. These other leftist nonprofit groups that donated directly or indirectly to Organizing for Action are MoveOn.org and Media Matters. Both organizations have got money from George Soros by the funneling of his monetary donations to MoveOn.org and Democracy Alliance. On April 15, 2017, the American Mirror had an article about who is really behind the thousands of marchers protesting, but what was not reported by any mainstream media was that this massive march is openly funded by George Soros or they have close ties to him. 6 out of 8 groups listed on the official website for Tax March are openly funded by George Soros or tied to him, and these groups These groups are listed below: Americans for Tax Fairness, MoveOn.org, the Center for Popular Democracy, and a group called Indivisible, whose project leaders are openly associated with other groups financed by Soros. The founders of the Individual Project is Angel Padilla, an analyst with the National Immigration Law Center, which is funded by Soros's Open Society Foundation. Now this next nonprofit group is the one that really worries me. American Federation of Teachers Education Foundation. It is a nonprofit arm of the American Federation of Teachers, and that is financed by Strategic Opportunities, which is a fund of Soros's Open Society Foundation. And here's why it worries me. Think about what I'm going to tell you. The American Federation of Teachers Education Foundation will be educating your children once they are in school. This is a group that is operating amongst the hired paid agitators who are creating civil unrest and civil disobedience under the guise of education. What types of hate-filled political indoctrination are being taught to your children by these agitators who are teachers? David Horowitz states in his new book, Big Agenda, that taking political agendas out of the American classrooms must become a priority. It is unconscionable that K-12 children should be indoctrinated at taxpayers' expense in the anti-American prejudices of the political left. By gaining a foothold into the teachers' union and associations, Soros and Obama's paid army of agitators are teaching the children of America the same style of hate-filled indoctrination against Republicans and our government that is similarly being taught in the Middle East by ISIS and/or Al-Qaeda terrorist groups. If you don't believe me, take a look at these last two actual scenarios that have played out on national television in the last 2 months. First was a nightly newscast showing ISIS and/or Al-Qaeda groups burning a President Trump effigy while hundreds of villagers stood around shouting and shooting their rifles in the air and encouraging on the people who were beating the burning effigy with sticks. Second is this scene shot somewhere in the United States. I saw on NBC Nightly News a large group of protesters standing around a circle at night, encouraging a group of young children to swing sticks and try to hit a President Trump effigy. The children got so into what they were doing, it appeared that they were out of control. After the children tired, an adult lit the effigy on fire, and the children began to shout and throw things at the effigy. All the while, the adults were shouting, chanting, laughing, and encouraging the children to act out in violence at our president and our government. Now you tell me what's the difference between these two groups and their behavior. Both of them spilled hatred and violence against President Trump. One group is technically the enemy of the entire free world, and the other group is U.S. citizens spilling hatred and violence against President Trump through the actions of their young children. Not a bit of difference in ideology or actions, just the location. As rioting protesters in these examples, you are no different than ISIS or Al-Qaeda. The financial spider webs that are spun throughout the political world do not leave any doubt in my mind as to who is really behind all the riots, protests, and marches against President Trump that is going on in today's world. Barack Obama and those who finance political left-wing agendas are behind the civil unrest and the civil disobedience. I am disgusted with the trained agitators for attacking Trump supporters. It is this kind of behavior that non-profit liberal left-wing organizations are training the agitators to do. Just because you are a liberal leftist mother, a father, a son, a teacher, or husband marching in the street, waving signs and shouting ugly chants does not make you immune to the silent, well-hidden propaganda of the George Soroses of the world. I bet you as a protester don't even know what the actual deep-seated core beliefs are of those you follow like a nation of sheep. All the protesters and agitators are doing is changing our great nation from a democracy to a democratic socialist country. If they succeed in making that change, the next step in the revolution is communism. They will have created a communist nation, and we will not be the United States of America. More accurate name for our country will be the United Socialist States of North America. In order to stop the spread of socialism in our country, all of us who are against socialism need to stand up and be counted, as the saying goes. We have to win at the voting polls in 2018 and 2020. I will be there doing what I can to stop this social threat to our country. Will you? Take care, and may you be blessed today and every day thereafter. I'm Granny Cox. Goodbye.